There's a quiet kind of beauty that only reveals itself with time, a beauty not found in youth's perfection, but in the stories etched into your smile lines, the steadiness in your voice, and the calm in your heart after decades of weathering life's storms. Aging for many has been framed as something to fear, something to fight, hide, or avoid at all costs. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if getting older is not the fading of life's flame, but the moment? It burns most steadily, clear, warm, and meaningful. In this video, we'll talk about the joy of getting older. Not the surface-level kind that comes and goes, but the deep, steady joy that grows stronger as the years pass. You'll hear how this stage of life can bring peace instead of pressure, clarity instead of confusion, and self-acceptance instead of striving. And more importantly, you'll be reminded that it's never too late to rediscover your passions, reconnect with yourself, and live with purpose. If any part of today's conversation resonates with your own journey, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this kind of message brings comfort or strength to your day, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next one. There's wisdom in your years, and we're here to honor it, together. There is a quiet liberation that comes with age, a slow peeling away of all the masks you once felt required to wear. In your younger years, it may have felt necessary to present a flawless version of yourself to the world, polished, poised, always striving. But as the years pass, something shifts. You begin to understand that your imperfections were never something to hide. They were clues to your resilience, evidence of your journey, silent markings of a life truly lived. Getting older allows you to see yourself more clearly, not through the lens of societal standards, but through the deeper wisdom that comes from within. This is where the true joy of aging begins. It's no longer about chasing perfection. It's about embracing the skin you're in and honoring the stories it carries. You stop rushing to apply makeup before answering the door. You no longer shrink from photos because your hair hasn't been dyed or your clothes don't match perfectly. You look at yourself, really look, and see a person who has survived heartbreak, rebuilt after disappointment, and held others up when they needed strength. That kind of beauty cannot be manufactured. It is the kind of self-acceptance after 60 that radiates from within. There's a different kind of confidence that grows in this season of life, one that isn't loud or flashy but rooted in truth. You know who you are and, more importantly, who you no longer need to be. Think of the woman who once disliked her raspy voice. It made her feel old, worn, and invisible. Until one day, while reading a bedtime story, her grandchild looked up and said, "I love when you read to me. Your voice makes me feel warm inside." That moment rewrote her perception. Her voice hadn't lost value, it had gained depth. And that's the beauty of growing older. It reveals the hidden meaning behind what you once viewed as flaws. You begin to find peace as you age, not because life gets easier, but because you no longer battle yourself. Social media may still parade perfection, but you no longer play along. You choose moments that matter, laughing freely, showing up as you are, loving with your whole heart. You begin to enjoy getting older because it gives you permission to be fully yourself without apology. Those so-called flaws, they connect you to others. They make you human. This is not the fading of your worth, it's the rise of your authenticity. It's no longer about being admired from afar. It's about being loved up close as the real you. So you wear your years like a badge of honor. You don't erase the lines, you earn them. And in doing so, you show the world a different kind of beauty, one that isn't filtered, posed, or perfected, just real, just you, just right. There's something quietly powerful about the way time refines your vision, not the kind measured by optometrists, but the inner lens through which you start to see life. When you're young, every setback feels monumental, every opinion weighs heavily, and every little thing demands your attention. But as the years accumulate, so does clarity. Aging doesn't just add years to your life, it strips away the noise, the false urgency, the clutter that once kept your heart racing and your mind spinning. You begin to see, truly see what matters. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves your worry. And many things that once consumed your thoughts now seem oddly small. Perhaps you remember staying awake after an argument, replaying every word, defending your side in imaginary comebacks, hoping to be understood. But age teaches you something softer, something stronger. Now, instead of fighting to be right, you pour 2 cups of tea, sit down without a script, and let silence carry your intention. Because peace matters more than pride. Because you've seen where pride leads and where patience can heal. That shift in priorities is not surrender. It's wisdom. There were times when you envied what others had. A newer car, a bigger house, flashier clothes. You equated these things with success, with happiness, with being ahead. But now, sitting in a creaky chair on your porch, warm light touching your face, breeze brushing your skin, you realize you've arrived, not in terms of status, but in soul. The simple things nourish you in ways achievement never could. You see with new eyes, and those eyes know the difference between noise and meaning. You also begin to notice people differently. Not just what they say, but how they sit in silence. Not just what they show, but what they carry. Your eyes scan more slowly now, not for judgment, but for truth. A friend's heavy sigh says more to you than 100 cheerful emojis. A child's distracted glance pulls you back into presence. You put down your phone not out of discipline, but out of reverence for the moment, for the person in front of you, for the life still unfolding right here. This sharpened vision doesn't come overnight. It comes from 1,000 disappointments that taught you what's worth holding. It comes from losses that pried open your heart and showed you how fragile and sacred the connection really is. You don't just see more clearly, you feel more deeply. And that combination makes you wiser, gentler, more human. Aging gracefully isn't about denying the passing of time. It's about letting time polish your insight. You stop chasing what's flashy. You start honoring what's lasting. And that's not just maturity. That's a new kind of strength. A strength that listens more than it argues, that chooses presence over perfection, that knows true richness isn't measured in money but in meaning. That is the vision only age can give. And once you see through those eyes, you never want to go back. With age, something beautiful begins to happen. You stop measuring your life by speed and start savoring it by presence. The rush that once dictated your days loses its grip, and in its place comes something quieter, something softer, something deeply human. You begin to move through your mornings not with urgency, but with care. The act of brewing tea is no longer a step in a routine. It becomes a ritual. You watch the steam rise, feel the heat seep into your palms, and suddenly, without effort, your breathing slows, your thoughts settle, and you remember that this simple moment is enough. You can't. Realize now that efficiency is not always a virtue. There was a time when you ate meals with one hand and scrolled your phone with the other, when the clock on the wall was the loudest voice in the room. But now, you eat more slowly. You taste the food. You chew with awareness, grateful for flavor, for nourishment, for the fact that you're still here to enjoy it. There's a subtle joy in this kind of presence, a joy that doesn't announce itself but lingers. It's the joy of aging, the kind that arises not from grand events, but from choosing to be fully alive in ordinary things. One afternoon, you sit by the window, not because there's something to accomplish, but because the clouds are moving and the light is changing. You don't pick up your phone. You don't reach for a book. You just sit. There's no productivity to justify this pause, and yet it may be the most meaningful part of your day, because it reconnects you to something you used to miss entirely, the steady rhythm of life that was always waiting behind your deadlines. This slowing down is not laziness. It is a form of wisdom. You begin to sense that the faster you move, the more you miss. And so, you give yourself permission to move more deliberately, to listen when someone speaks without already forming your reply, to walk without headphones, to truly hear the sound of your own steps. You find peace, not in the quantity of what you do, but in the quality of how you do it. This shift is subtle, but it transforms everything. Aging gracefully doesn't mean becoming less. It means becoming more in tune. You no longer chase moments to capture. You create moments worth remembering. You find that emotional strength in old age often comes not from force, but from stillness. You understand that you don't need to fill every silence, every gap in the day, every unplanned hour. Because now you know that life's richest magic often hides in the space between the doing, in the quiet breath, the shared glance, the sky at dusk. And that magic? You only find it when you slow down enough to feel it. There comes a time in life when you realize that wisdom doesn't need a podium. It doesn't need credentials or applause. It lives quietly in your memories, in the lessons carved by time, in the way you've risen after falling, in the gentle strength that now shapes your days. You don't have to teach like a professor or speak like a preacher to leave a mark. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come through the simple act of telling your truth, gently, honestly, without expecting anything in return. That's the kind of legacy that lasts, not because it's grand, but because it's real. When your granddaughter comes to you, heart heavy from her first real failure, you don't hand her a book on resilience. You pour tea, sit beside her, and share your own story. The day you lost your job at 40, the silence that followed, the quiet panic, and how eventually you found your footing again. You don't dramatize. You don't moralize. You just tell it as it was. And in doing so, you offer her something no lecture could, the strength to face her storm knowing someone she loves has weathered one too. You begin to understand that the smallest moments hold the most meaning. When someone asks how you've stayed married all these years, you don't list out rules. You smile and mention the walks you take each morning, how sometimes you talk and sometimes you don't. You say it helps to know when to speak and when to listen. That's it. No theory, just truth, lived and felt. Even objects become vessels for teaching. You dust off the old guitar tucked behind the closet door, one you haven't touched in years. A neighbor's son, eyes full of curiosity, reminds you of who you were before bills and deadlines crowded out your music. You give it to him, gently placing it in his arms like passing a flame. This guitar got me through the loneliest years of my life, you say. And that's all you need to say. That single sentence plants something in him, something about survival, about hope, about the quiet power of art. Aging gracefully means recognizing that your story has value, not because it's perfect, but because it's true. You've lived through joy, regret, laughter, and grief. You've loved, lost, tried, failed, and healed. And in sharing even a small piece of that, you offer someone else the gift of feeling less alone. You build bridges between generations, not with sermons, but with honesty. You begin to understand that the legacy you leave behind isn't built in monuments or medals. It's built in memories, in empathy, in conversations shared over tea, in small moments of connection that echo long after you're gone. Rediscovering. Purpose in later life doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it simply means being more open, being available, letting others learn not from your perfection, but from your presence. And in that presence, your story becomes a quiet light that helps someone else find their way home. There's a quiet truth that aging reveals. Some dreams don't die. They simply wait. They wait through decades of responsibility, through careers built and families raised, through the noise and the rush that once made you forget they were there. But now, as life begins to slow, as the days open with more space and less pressure, those quiet callings start to stir again. They whisper not of success or recognition, but of joy. They don't ask for perfection. They ask for presence. And if you listen closely, you'll feel the soft pull of passions you once placed on a shelf. Maybe it starts with a dusty box pulled from the back of a closet, a set of watercolor paints you bought 15 years ago. You take them to a weekend art class, not to impress anyone, but because something in you longs to create again. As the brush moves, shaky but sincere, you realize it wasn't talent you were missing. It was time. And now you finally have it. That small act, sitting among strangers and letting colors spill onto paper, becomes a return not just to painting, but to yourself. Or perhaps you find yourself waking up a little earlier than usual, not because of obligation, but because something in you wants to write. Not for an audience, not for acclaim, just for you. You fill a page in your journal each morning, listening for the voice inside you that has waited so patiently. And in that simple rhythm of pen meeting paper, you begin to rediscover the steady comfort of being with your own thoughts. It doesn't matter what the words say. What matters is that they are yours, and they are alive. There's also the man who once dreamed of becoming a baker, but life swept him into an office and held him there for decades. Now retired, he bakes each morning, kneading dough by hand, letting it rise in silence, then sharing the warm loaves with neighbors as if offering pieces of his heart. It's not a business. It's not about profit. It's about feeding joy. And every morning, as the scent of bread fills his home, he feels a sense of purpose that no paycheck ever gave him. Getting older gives you the rare gift of reorientation. You no longer measure time by productivity, but by meaning. You no longer chase the world's definition of success. You chase what makes you feel whole. This is not a second chance because you failed the first. It's a new beginning because you finally have the freedom to follow what truly matters. You begin to see that rediscovering purpose in later life isn't a luxury. It's essential. It brings vitality, richness, and emotional renewal. The joy of aging lies in this, the realization that it's not too late. Not to paint, not to write, not to bake, to sing, to build, to love, not to become who you've always been beneath all the roles you once had to play. You haven't missed your moment. You're standing in it now. With age comes a different kind of courage, the kind that doesn't shout or seek attention, but quietly reclaims your peace by choosing who you allow into your life. In youth, relationships often came with noise, the need to belong, to please, to be accepted, even at the cost of your own well-being. But growing older sharpens your sense of emotional truth. You begin to see clearly who adds weight to your heart and who lightens it. And slowly, gently, you learn to choose love that feels safe, nourishing, and mutual, not performative or draining. It might begin with a small decision, one you once would have agonized over. You see a familiar name on your phone, someone who always manages to leave you feeling diminished. In the past, you would have picked up, smiled through the discomfort, and carried the heaviness long after the call ended. But now, you let it ring. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of quiet wisdom. You know that protecting your energy is not selfish, it's necessary. You've come to understand that peace is not something you owe anyone, it's something you owe yourself. At the same time, you feel a gentle pull toward reconnection, but this time, with intention, you scroll through old messages, find a name you haven't spoken to in years, someone who once showed you kindness when you needed it most. You send a short note. I never forgot what you did, thank you. There are no expectations, just sincerity. And when they reply, the conversation doesn't pick up where it left off. It begins anew, this time stripped of ego, rich with honesty. This is what building deeper relationships as you age can look like. Fewer masks, more heart. You also begin to see the value of small, intentional gatherings. You no longer seek out crowds or loud celebrations. The dinner table is quieter now. The voices are fewer. But the laughter? It's fuller. Because the people who remain are those who see you clearly and love you anyway. These are not relationships of convenience. They are connections of choice. And in this choosing, you reclaim your emotional strength. Aging gracefully invites you to be more discerning without being closed off. You become strong enough to say no when something no longer serves you, and soft enough to say yes when love is real. The world may still reward popularity, but you now value peace. You understand that your time, your presence, and your listening ear are sacred offerings, and not everyone is meant to receive them. Choosing who you let in doesn't mean building walls, it means opening doors, carefully, consciously, and only to those who knock with kindness. In doing so, you create space not only for emotional strength in old age, but for something even deeper, a life surrounded not by many, but by those who truly matter. And in that circle, no matter how small, you feel rich beyond measure. Getting older is not a decline, it's a deepening. It's a return to what really matters. While youth often rushes to prove something, aging allows us to slow down and simply be. With each passing year, you gain emotional strength, sharper perspective, and the freedom to choose peace over pressure. You begin to enjoy the small things, a warm cup of tea, a quiet morning, a genuine conversation. And these are not just moments, they are milestones of a life lived with intention. Aging gracefully isn't about denying time, it's about honoring what time has taught you. You learn to let go of regrets, to love more wisely, and to embrace your story as it is, flaws and all. You rediscover purpose in everyday acts and feel a renewed sense of clarity in your relationships, your passions, and your inner peace. If this video spoke to your experience or made you reflect on your own journey, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts or stories in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if you'd like to continue walking this meaningful path together, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt insights. Growing older is a gift. Let's honor it together.